call, please.
Barr,
Here.
Giovanini,
Here.
Echo, here, Callis, Lee,
Here.
Hicks,
Here.
Bradshaw, Myers,
Here.
Gager,
Here.
Willie.
Here. Thank you. We have need for meeting of the Civic Center Authority, and no business before the Civic Center Authority. We'll adjourn that meeting and go right into the consent agenda. We've had an opportunity to look through there. Motion by Kurt to approve the consent agenda. Second by Don. Roll call, please.
Barr,
Yes.
Giovanini,
Yes.
Echo, yes, Lee,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Myers, Gaber,
Yes.
Willie.
In the regular agenda, item A, ordinance 2021-0025, the fence height variance at 603 East Denver Street. This has been approved by the zoning board and sent to us.
Dave, do you want to give a little summary?
Sure. There was a fence installed on the property at 603 East Timber Street. There's a violation of the ordinance which only allows 5 foot fence on the property. Okay, only by notice the fence was installed in their contacted the send a letter violation to the property owner and also to the project manager of the contract, which has to be material. He was aware that the fence was put in violation, contacted the subcontractor, they would come back and lower the fence to 5 foot. In the meantime, I've been approached by the property owner's representative, and they want to keep the fence at 6 foot. I told them that's going to require a variance to be able to keep the fence at 6 foot.
The variance request is to keep the fence at the height it is until the property is sold and other occupants are involved. And this is what the zoning board approved or brought to us to approve. So, do we have a motion to grant the variance?
I have a question about so how does it, if the house is sold, whose responsibility is it, or is there something filed with the title?
Well, the plan is, when we have an ordinance where we have contingencies like this in it, we'll record that ordinance in the courthouse, so when anybody's selling it with a title search, it will show up on the title commitment, just like a tap-on fee does for sewer. And it should come up in the sale process, and the buyer and seller have to negotiate who's taken care of. And we can enforce it against anybody if it's recorded.
Would the buyer have the opportunity to come back and seek a variance for themselves?
They can always ask for a variance, certainly. They can come in before they close, or close it, and they say they'll take care, they'll assume the responsibility. And if they did that, they could come out and file for a variance themselves.
I understand she's asking it to stay at 6
Right.
because of some hardship.
Yes.
I'll say, and this is probably the weirdest person to be saying this, I'm sympathetic to your plight, but state law does require that we look at certain things, and that's why our form has 4 different questions on why it's requested. First question wasn't answered at all, second question was not applicable, third question was answered no limitations, and only the fourth one said see attached letters, so I'd like to see, before I would entertain voting yes, I'd like to see this form filled out more and then go to the variance, to the planning zoning. That's just me. State law requires we look at all those things. That's why we have the question.
Any other comments?
The only comment I have is, why doesn't the zoning board pursue these questions if they're supposed to be answered?
We went through them.
You did go through.
We went through them, and I think the general consensus, Dave was there, I don't know, put words in their mouth, but I think their position was the uniqueness of the situation trumped the those technicalities.
I guess the only other oddity is, shouldn't the contractor have known?
Yeah, the contractor knew, the subcontractor did not. The project manager for Peerless Fencing hired a subcontractor to do the work. They were not aware of it. So as soon as that contractor, project manager, was well aware of the ordinance, and the schedule to go back down, and the time was open.
Dave, did the subcontractor have a contractor's license in the city?
Yeah.
So he's presumed to know.
They're a legal company, they are not.
So he's presumed to know our zoning requirements.
What's that?
So he's presumed to know our ordinances and our requirements.
Yes, he's presumed, especially by the project manager who hired him to do the job. There was no ill intent by anyone.
I'm saying there was.
It just happened.
I'll be honest, I'm surprised that our ordinance allows a fence of this type in the front yard, but it does apparently, because, that much was allowed. We had a whole community of homes looking like that, who would not need a look that we want, but I know that's not what it's all about.
Well, we have a lot of unique situations throughout our community that variances have been granted for, and hardship issues and other things, which this kind of falls into that category. I think that deserves to be given the opportunity, and I've been by the place several times, and I don't see it as objectionable.
If I could revisit, John, your point of the planning commission, and they, I think, due to the uniqueness, as their perceived uniqueness of the situation, is what drove the additional language that says, in the event that that individual is not living there anymore, it comes into conformance. So they really wrestled with trying to balance the two. They spent quite a bit of time on it, so it wasn't something they took lightly.
What's magical about 5 feet or 6 feet? Who determines that?
What's that?
What is magical about 5 feet or 6 feet? How is that determined?
The wisdom of the city council.
Collective.
It's the ordinance, what's in the ordinance that was probably boilerplate language back in 1997 when we passed this ordinance.
I mean, I've been by it too. In fact, I was just by it this noon. And I don't have an objection to it.
Okay. We have a motion then to pass the variance.
I would go.
Motion by Frank, second by Jason. Roll call, please.
Barr,
Yes.
Jovinetti,
Yes.
Eckhoff,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Myers, Gaber,
No.
Willie.
Yes.
Thank you. The variance is passed. We appreciate the opportunity. Good luck. Moving on, item B, Farnsworth Group Contract Central Business District. I see Brian's up, raring to get us started.
Mr. Mayor, we've talked for probably a couple of years now with our downtown business district and our streets, our width of streets, our sidewalks, different amenities that are downtown. And this last year, we tried to incorporate a little bit with the planners that we placed out there, moving our two-lane streets to one lane where there was limited width. So that was kind of our pilot this summer. We have an opportunity now through some grant funds that we would like to pursue. And in that process, we feel that the downtown is a vital area, an important area, and that we need to really look at this area in greater depth. So we reached out to Farnsworth Group, and we have Jeff Martin and Neil Finland here from Farnsworth tonight that have a presentation that talk a little bit about some things they've done before, so other downtown areas, and some things that we may want to pursue, landscaping, ADA issues, sidewalk issues, width of streets, all of these things really to draw people downtown and have all people welcome in the downtown area. And we think to go forward for these grants that we need to have some help here and have Farnsworth do that, help us with that. So I'd like to have Jeff and Neil, if they are ready, to go ahead and help with our presentation tonight.
If you would, please.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm Jeff Martin. I'm a community planner and landscape architect with Farnsworth Group. Neil Finland in the back. Neil's one of our principals. Most of you know Neil. This whole conversation literally started several weeks ago. It was Brian and Neil started talking. I got a call from Neil. He said, I got a neat, great opportunity. I came up last week, met with Bob, who walked here downtown. And a lot of this is coming together. There's the Rebuild Main Street grants, which are due in mid-January, early to mid-January. For those grants, you need to have an ask. Here's what we want to do with our downtown. So we put together, and you've got a copy of the proposal that shows kind of the steps we're going to go through over the next 6 weeks. This is a pretty tight time frame, but this is moved kind of front and center on my schedule to get this complete. But what I thought I would do before we maybe go through the contract and answer any questions you have, I want to show you what we've done in Paxton that's similar, and kind of show you kind of what the deliverable, what a vision for downtown is. I think Brian even mentioned it, is there's been a lot of discussion of here's what we should do to our downtown. This is what we're doing in Paxton right now. We completed a master plan for them. This was 2016. We are finally now, phase 1 is going out to bid for streetscape this coming month. Part of that is due to COVID, but these things take a little bit of a while. So I wanted to walk you through real quick the master plan we did for Paxton, because there are some similarities. If you haven't been to Paxton, it's a great little downtown. They've got tons of antique shops, tons of great buildings. It's a smaller version of Pontiac, but I think it's applicable. If you want to hit the next slide. One of the first things we did, and again, when we did Pontiac, or when we did Paxton, this was over the course of several months. So again, we're going to have to, it's all hands on deck to be able to get this finished for January. But we started to look at the history of downtown Paxton, and I'd like to do the same here. You obviously have a ton of great history. How do we start to reflect that even more in the streetscape? And some of these images on the bottom, you're going to see where they come up later. If you look, for example, at the Paxton sign, that actually hung on the depot downtown, and you'll see where we use this later. And then that column on the right, I want you to remember that. If you want to hit the next slide. Our study area, this is their central business district. This was 4 blocks of Market Street. And this is kind of a plan view showing it at the 30,000-foot level. It starts to show sidewalk improvements, how we can reduce lane widths, what do we do to the intersections, what do we do with street lighting. But again, this is at the master plan level. So we're trying to create that vision. We're not getting into detailed design. If you want to hit the next slide. This was more of the southern end of the study area. This was kind of the residential street coming into it, not as relevant as that other slide. If you want to hit the next one. But here we start to zoom in, this starts to show just some of that vision of what could become downtown. And if you look at, I don't have a pointer with me, but if you see that intersection right there, we like to introduce what we call bump outs, where we're actually moving that curb line out. When Bob and I were walking downtown, he mentioned we get a lot of tourists here. We want people to walk around, to linger, to feel safe. That's really what these bump outs do. And there's opportunities on those bump outs. We're going to want to look at materials. Do we start to introduce brick in those? There's different, concrete, different things we can use in those. But it's really making this, your downtown's already pedestrian friendly, but it can be even more pedestrian friendly. Some of the drive aisles on the roads right now, we think we can shrink those down, widen sidewalks, whenever we can widen sidewalks. We can have outdoor dining, al fresco dining, and we can avoid some of the little parklets that you've had to construct. They're serving a purpose right now, but there's even one that you had to construct to allow ADA access, to get around the sidewalk. Where if we can start to move that curb line, we can have both, ADA access and sidewalk dining both happening together. If you want to hit the next one, that's just kind of a repeat. There's a lot of slides here, so I just want to go through this fairly quickly. A lot of times in the master plan, we like to show imagery. The mayor of Paxton, he takes this vision book whenever he's going to recruit new businesses, and for the last 4 or 5 years, he'll throw this on the table, and he said, this is what I want to do to my downtown. So a lot of times, I like to put imagery in there to show photos of what built streetscapes look like. People tend to understand that a little bit better sometimes than drawings. We're going to want to look at street lighting, all those types of things. I mentioned that when we looked at the historic columns, so they have a little one-way dead-end street, and you can see it at the top there. And what we're going to do is to convert that into a little plaza. And right now they're painting a mural on one of the buildings on that street. We eventually want to create a gateway into that street, so we went back and looked at one of those old columns that we found from 70 years ago. So I'd like to do that here. I think we've got great history. I don't think we come in with contemporary ideas. I think we kind of look a little bit to the past. So one of the requirements we have in our contract on Bob is, hey, give me historic photos. And I know they're out there. I found some already. But whatever I can get our hands on to help kind of influence what downtown could learn from.
Now, those my photos that I took personally that they
I know you're old, man. Now you see anything you have on hand. Signage, you do a pretty good job right now with signage, but again, want to start to look at that. So we showed Paxton, here's some opportunities that we can do with signage. I showed you that old train station that had that said Paxton. We used the same font that was on that old train station signage. If you want to flip to the next one, we even developed a little logo. You already have a nice logo, but they have a nice city hall building. So again, that's that same font. So again, part of this vision is to look at the signage, gateway features, to really direct people to let them know they're in the downtown. You can kind of just keep skipping through these. Kind of some secondary signage. Again, looking at street lighting. You've got some nice globe fixtures out there. They're anywhere from 20 to 30 years old, from what I can tell. So again, I think we need to find out, what, I think we want to stay with those. Part of our proposal, we do want to, it's probably going to be in early December, have a public open house. And at that public open house, start to show people, here's our thoughts of downtown. And I think in there we can show opportunities to probably stick with the same type of lighting, but it's a chance to upgrade it, to maybe go with LED lighting. In Paxton, we even thought of special banners. Again, the regulatory signage, there's even nice trim packages and kits that you can put on it that makes it look historic. If you've ever been to downtown Galena, everyone loves to go to downtown Galena. Look at the back of their stop signs. My wife always gives me a hard time because I'm taking photos of odd things. That's what I do. She's like, why are you taking a photo of the back of the stop sign? I said, look at it. It's got a black case that covers the back of the stop sign. It's a small detail, but it's those small details that really make your downtown stand out. Site amenities, benches, trash cans, those type of things. All this goes into the vision book. We'll get to the next one. These little charging pedestals, we're starting to use these more and more. There's historic looking ones, but those things are great. Someone can sit on the bench, plug in an iPhone, and again, it's someone that's visiting from Scotland, running around 66. You get them to hang out, give them Wi-Fi, I know you have Wi-Fi in town, but
a chance to charge up their phone. And again, just a link. This doesn't apply in Paxton. We started looking at the facades. That's not what we want to do here. This is looking at streetscape. If you want to just jump to the next couple, and I think there's a final, go one more. Murals, you guys are light years ahead of most communities in murals. You do a great job with that. This final one, this was a great little sketch. This just shows that little one-way dead-end street, showing what that looks like. And you can also see what the curb bump outs look like. So that's hitting you with a lot. That's drinking from a fire hose right there. But in essence, that's what a vision book is. That, we're going to provide you, here's what we want to do with the downtown. The study area goes from Howard to Water Street, and then from Division to Chicago. So it's a pretty big area. And I think to be able to pull this off, the way I've outlined it in the proposal, is we start to look at, we want to focus on Madison Street, because there's a lot of issues there, but kind of come up with a typical solution that we can use on Madison Street. Come and meet with Bob and Brian and others and kind of get your thoughts on that. Once we get kind of a head nod that we're going in the right direction, then we can apply that to the entire study area. Hit the drawing boards hard, and in early December, come back, have an open house, probably right here, and show the public, here's our vision for downtown, what are your thoughts, finalize that. The grant, again, is due, it's mid to early January. So we also are going to look at kind of a high level, some cost estimates on that, mainly focusing on Madison Street. Then if we're going to go after $1 million grant, what could that buy us? How many bump outs could we get? How much lighting could we get? So again, I thought this was a great example to show. I think I hit most of the things that we want to do in the contract, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have a chance to look through the contract, or if you have any questions on kind of the deliverable. It'll be an 11 by 17 that we'll provide you. And again, it's something that's great. You can post it on your website. Again, the mayor of Paxton, he found it. It's got a nice spiral binding. And again, it's something you can take around. It's an economic development tool. It's really kind of a town planning tool.
You mentioned grants. Do you assist with helping to find these grants, or is the city responsible for taking?
The way I've set it up in the contract is I'm going to have my hands full kind of pulling off the vision. The thought was Bob and his staff would pull the grant together.
Keep in mind, this is the one big downtown grant that's sitting out there come January.
Yeah.
And so there will be subsequent ones. Also, this will provide us a good roadmap for when funds are available. Okay, now we're going to tackle this one. And we already know what we're going to be doing. Because I think a lot of the things we've done have just been reactive, and this is going to enable us to put into place something that will be a guide for years to come.
So we can't help with grant writing, but for the proposal that we have, we're going to assist, give the city the information that they need. The thought was the city would pull this together, but we can help out. But Bob's right, there's other grants out there that this can apply for. And again, the master plan is not, I can show you the final plans for Paxton. They're generally the same, but we started to lose certain things have to change. The documents that actually get designed that the contractors are bidding on are a little bit different than the vision book. But things kind of change as you go through it, as funding becomes available, you start to align those two. But again, it really does become a roadmap to direct you for the next, 5 to 10 years. It's a big study area to make all these changes to.
And we'd be utilizing TIF funds for the study.
A few weeks ago, we had an infrastructure meeting, and ADA was discussed at that. Will this take care of those ADA issues? Can you put that to rest?
Again, we're going to, that Madison Street had a lot of areas that there's a lot of ADA issues. So we're going to start to look at that and start to say, hey, if we can do a curb bump out, we're pulling that curb farther out. That gives us a larger areas to start to do handicap ramps. But what we're not getting into is, here's the final drawings of what that would look like. But it's
the first step in handling those ADA issues. And, excuse me, in Paxton, we had several areas where we had to step down a couple of steps from the curb. By pulling that curb out further into the street, that allowed us to make up that slope and to kind of get rid of that and handle a lot of the ADA issues.
I have a motion acceptance of the contract.
Second.
Any other comment?
Access to part of that.
Oh, yeah, there's the photo man right there.
About 2,000 pictures that I scanned several years ago.
Okay.
Pictorial for the Historical Society. And what I don't have, another gentleman that Neil and I know, says solar meter, other guy.
Yeah, but I don't know that we want to burden him with something.
Good point.
There's still that constitutional issue of cruel and inhumane punishment.
I'll dig through and find those.
Yeah, anything that, you kind of saw a hint of it on Paxton, but anything that shows, old street facades, because then that's.
There's a nice Madison Street.
Yeah, that would be good to see, because it might start to dictate what we do. Were they tree line streets, were they not tree line
I
streets?
think there's one in Madison and where they were used to have a light of a small farm or something.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for this contract to be approved. So, motion by Kelly, second by Brian. Roll call, please.
Joe Vanini,
Yes.
Eckhoff,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Myers, Gaber,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
Clark.
Yes. So Don, you have those scanned already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just gotta find the CDs.
Okay, then we'll forward them on.
Yeah.
Super. I knew he had a warehouse full.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, item C, fertilizer contract for the golf course. You want to talk about that, or should we get Shannon?
We're going to let those guys take it off.
Taylor and Shannon are going to enlighten us.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here tonight to discuss a few of the golf course topics. And the first of those is going to be competition. When the city first took over the golf course in April, we had to set up a few meetings with a few different companies to figure out which of them was going to best suit our needs. One of the key components of picking a chemical company is knowing that when you choose that company, they'll be able to assist you with any turf-related questions related to the course. Well, early on, meeting with one of the companies, I felt like they were more picking my brain to find turf solutions and answers rather than me being able to come to them with any problems. So it kind of made me concerned that in the middle of summer, if I had issues, granted they can supply me with chemicals, but they can't supply me with the information that I may need to solve certain problems. One of the other companies that we talked to, they just couldn't come close to being able to give us what we needed with anything close to what we were willing to spend. Whereas Winfield Solutions, or Winfield United, I should say, in their presentation to Bob and I, they made me feel really secure in knowing that they're going to be able to answer my turf questions, as well as supply me with chemicals I need within a budget that we felt would be sufficed. Along with all the turf knowledge that we gained from them, they're also able to supply us with free soil samples and on-site help with any turf issues we have or will have in the future. Their sales representative is Kyle Sherwood. He was out 6 times this summer to actually get the lay of the land, see the course, see the problems that we're dealing with, so that we could kind of adjust the program as needed for the rest of the year at the points he was out there, as well as going forward in the future. And a lot of times getting them to actually be on the site is not necessarily the easiest thing to do in the middle of summer. And now, the soil sample ones, they're usually really expensive, like you have to send them out to and get them back, they're really expensive, but Winfield has their own lab, so they do it for free. And that's a perk in working with their company that I haven't seen in many of the other companies that I work with, both here and at other courses. And now that we have the new sprayer that came September 1st, they've also been really influential in helping me with that as far as programming and getting me to be able to put in the gallons per minute that I want, the flow rate, the nozzle selection, the dialing it in so it's specific to our course and our needs and what we need. They were probably more helpful, or at least as helpful as the people we bought it from. Now, Colin and I recently sat down and talked about the plan for next year, and we really only had to tweak a few things based upon what we've seen this year, and that's pretty much the core essentials of the program will stay the same. But now that we're actually going into winter and a time where we own the golf course, we can get into some advantages of the early order program. So when Kyle and I were sitting down, we were trying to optimize as much savings in the early order program as we could. And together we were almost able to get to almost a $9,000 savings. And because we weren't able to get into the early order program this year, since we had bought the course so close to the start of the golf season, they actually sat down with Bob and I explained that they would supply this chemical called Secure Action, which is one of the most effective chemicals in golf course management, for free all summer long as we use 4 of the 5 tanks to do the fairways with this product and the 5th tank with the competitor's product, so that they can show us over the length of time how much better their product is than their competitors. And I can tell you firsthand that I would get 7 to 10 days longer control with their product than the competitors, meaning I would have to spray 7 to 10 days earlier the select fairways that I chose to be with their tank, rather than the other fairways I could save for almost another 2 weeks. And finally, on the topic of chemicals, Winfield, and this is probably the most important thing, they guarantee the product. So I go out at the times they say, at the rates they say, with the products that they say, they'll guarantee the results. So if I have, in the middle of the summer, I have a breakout of any sort of disease on the course, they'll come, they'll diagnose it, they'll supply me with the chemicals needed to restore the turf, as well as supply me with said chemicals for the rest of the year for that specific turf disease problem. And the fact that they stand behind their product in that way makes me feel extremely comfortable in using any of the products that they offer. Any questions on the topic of chemicals?
So basically, what we're proposing tonight is to lock in the program for next year, in order to get the,
In order to get the $8,751.95.
we have to pay for it now. We still pay for it as we use it.
Yeah.
But
Segmented into June, yeah.
Any discussion? Sounds like a great savings, so we just need a motion to.
Make a motion to go ahead and proceed with that.
Okay, motion by Brian, second by Don Hicks. Roll call, please.
Eckhoff,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Gaber,
Yes.
Willie, Barr,
yes.
Jovanini.
Yes.
I'm going to jump in right now. In your packet was a 6-month income statement, preliminary for our operation. In terms of on the revenue side, we were really light on the memberships that, getting the late start that we did. That's an area we're going to need to look at, but we're very close on the daily green fees and cards. That includes outings, which was about 56,000. The daily green fees, daily card fees, a host of other things. The range, we did good. The miscellaneous, that was the tea sponsorship program. I think you guys did that, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that really helped out. On the expense side, you're pretty much right there. The miscellaneous, those were startup costs that, changing the locks, computers, some TVs. We had to rent a sprayer for 3 months. And so, those won't be that high next year. So still, when we get down to the ending balance, you'll see in the fourth column, we said we were gonna have an ending balance of 109,000, and we ended up with 105, which is pretty close, particularly given those startup costs that were part of the budget. So we've got work to do for next year, and we'll start with the finance committee, and then also we want to get rates rolled out quickly. We're working on marketing, we're working on name, so that come the 1st of December, we're ready to. So, you guys have some more now?
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about the staffing, specifically the volunteers and the community service workers I have. First, I'll talk about the volunteers. We had a lot of great volunteers here this year. As you can see, the list of the names up there. A few of them were helping on the maintenance side and the mechanical side, and there was a good bit of help on events and outings as well. Paul Collins and Marty all kind of helped on the rough. Marty kind of took care of the primary areas of the golf course, Collins kind of the secondary areas, and Paul kind of the outer areas, as well as around the clubhouse and entrance areas. And Collins and Paul, I mean, they would go above and beyond. They love a chainsaw as much as anybody I've ever known, so getting them out there after storms, getting them out there for aesthetic, to trim for aesthetic look, to trim for playability, like where carts hit branches along the cart path, getting that stuff cleared, things like that. And Paul even helped once the kids went back to high school, which is the majority of my staff this summer. We jump on the fairway more in the afternoon and go. I mean, just to be able to count on those guys and know that if I needed to ask them for anything at all, they were always willing to help. And then on the other side of the coin, you had the Tuesday morning ladies. I know I'll forget a bunch of them, but you had Nikki Rosenbaum and Barbara Cushing and Jane Manning and Marianne Wright. I mean, they helped in every area that I needed to do for the start of the year for the truck tournament. They helped me get kids out to the holes they needed to be. For the IESA regional that we had, they were my starters, they were my spotters, they really helped in that area. They also they helped me run the Memorial Scramble. They did the high school kids and the Indian Scrambles this summer. They helped me with both invitationals that we had. I mean, the volunteer help at this golf course has been like nothing I've ever seen in any golf course I've been at. So I just want them to know that I appreciate all their help this year. As far as community service workers go, we had 12 of them this year. Over half of them worked at least 50 hours, and a few even close to 100. They seemed to come at the right time. Early on in the spring, I had a flux of them before the high school kids got out of school, so I could kind of fill the gaps in with them there. And then the same thing at the end of the season, or toward the end of the season in the fall when the kids went back. They always seemed to be just enough of them there to help me get the job done. They helped in basically all areas of the golf course, with landscaping, weed eating, outing setup and tear down, driving range, watering, restroom facility cleanup. I mean, they were useful in any area that I needed. And so far, I haven't had any issues. I mean, they, for the most part, showed up on time on the days that they're supposed to be there, for the time that they're supposed to be there. So, I mean, you had a slacker or two every once in a while, but for the most part, they kind of did the job that I needed them to do and went about the day. But overall, I feel like the community service help was a great addition to the golf course this year. And no golf course I've ever worked at before has given me that ability. It's a lot of great free labor. Are there any questions on the volunteering and the community service stuff?
How are you
volunteers, I probably should do something along those lines. I say a lot of thank yous, and they for the most part all know that I'm extremely appreciative. I actually haven't necessarily given them anything. I get a lot of opinions on what the name and or logo should be. And my last topic of the night is I'm going to discuss the outings real quick. We had 21 of them this year, and 7 cancellations due to either COVID uncertainty or other reasons. They range from the hoo-ha military veterans outing, which was 132 golfers, to the Shooter McGavin outing, which held only 32. All in all, I think the outing season went well. And I say that because of the 21 outings we have, only one of them are not coming back, and the only reason they're not coming back is because this year was the last year of their event. Most have already confirmed for next year, and some, including the Clay County seniors and the Prep Tour, have locked in solid dates for next year. Probably our most prestigious event, or the one that we got the most marketing, I guess you call it from, would be the Chicago District Golf Association qualifier, or the CDGA qualifier. It's a large amateur event where we see many of the state's best young and old golfers together playing against each other. It was a lot of fun this year. As a golf course superintendent, I like holding those sort of events because they expect and want the golf course to be in the most pristine and where the greens are rolling the best they are all year, that sort of preparation that goes into that. And finally, with the help of Bob Eckhoff and the Elks, we're going to be hosting the 2022 State Elks Championship in July, which is a very exciting event to put on our calendar for next year. And as far as the outings go, that's all I have for you guys tonight. So any questions on any of the topics that I hit tonight?
I think we all need to realize the value of those volunteers. Because they save us a lot of money, and they're good, reliable men that Marty shows up every Monday. He would be there every day, Paul would.
There are 12 sets of eyes.
I mean, they love what they do, and they're worth lots of dollars.
There are 12 sets of eyes that give me information that I don't necessarily see all the time.
Not only that, but our city staff, I think, has done a great job of stepping in and doing a really good job, and it shows.
Jake, we budgeted quite a bit of money for the irrigation system. His crews, you chased out a lot of leaks this year, huh? I don't think we had to do any outside contracting at all, did we?
No, we did it all in-house. Well, minus the comment.
Most comments we get about the golf course have been very favorable, and a lot of that is because of all the work of all the people you name, but it's also the work of the fellow that's managing it, Pro Shop, and Taylor is helping you keep everything in line. So good job.
Appreciate that.
You just got to go into next year.
Taylor's got a little thing too, right?
Very short, yeah.
Okay.
You can go to the next one, David. So we've never programmed a golf course before, and getting our feet under us and just kind of understanding the lay of the land with the new facility was really important this very first year. And just how much time, and Kelly knows how much time these outings take, day of, prep before. So it really did take a lot of time on our part. So now that we kind of have an understanding of what we're doing, a little bit more on the programming side, it's my final point, but I'll talk about it now. It's going to be a priority for us next year. So you're going to see a lot more community type events, not only just golf related, but non-golf related as well. So here are some of the events that we did have with programming wise. We obviously had a great opening celebration. We had our 4th of July event out there. That was a big hit with the community. In working with past relationships that the Elks had, working with St. Mary's, the junior high, the relationships that were built with IESA and IHSA, some of those were new this year. Working with high school, it continued as well. Shana mentioned the IESA sectionals that was hosted at our golf course this year. Lots of meets that were through the high school, We had our junior clinic, and that was obviously taught by Danny and Allie, so we really appreciate their hard work, and you can see in the background there, Danny Grace is teaching some of our youngsters there in game of golf, so it really went well for the first year. We had some adult leagues that continued on from previous years. We're looking to expand those for next year as well. And the Youth on Course, for those of you that don't know, that is through, I think it's through CDGA, right, Kelly?
Yeah.
And they really try to encourage youth to participate in the game of golf. So what will happen is for $5, if they qualify through this Youth on Course program, the CDGA will actually reimburse us that amount for the youth participant to golf at our golf course. So it really doesn't cost us anything, and the youth get to use the golf course for a very, very cheap rate. We also partnered with Harvest Host. That was something new. You guys see them up at City Hall a lot in the parking lot. There's a whole separate golf section that Harvest Host has, and Shannon and Liz were very involved with that. And you know, every single time that we had a review, it seemed to be positive because they really loved the location. They loved the Elks Lodge staff inside. It went very, very well for us this year. And something that we're looking at doing, my final point is the golf simulator. As you guys know, that's out at the golf course right now. We're looking at moving that inside to the rec center just for staffing reasons, being a little bit more accessible for those that want to use it year round. So, again, it went very well, I thought, programming wise, but next year you guys are really going to see an emphasis on programming out the golf course, and it should be a good year and the years following that.
And I think we also need to talk about that we've had a strong working relationship with the Elks. We coexist in a building, and staffs have worked together well, and you know, that's been a really good thing.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. Okay, moving on. Asbestos abatement, bid inspection. Bob, you got a couple moments on that?
In your packet is the contract with Deegan Group, who does our asbestos abatement. Again, we had 7 properties that we acquired over the past couple of years. All but one had asbestos mold or other things, and so before we tear down those properties, we need to take care of the abatement. This is quite an undertaking that I don't think we're staffed to handle, so we're proposing to contract Deegan Associates to provide the bid documents and then also to provide inspections and reporting on the final removal.
I think we're all familiar with the properties in question. We want to move ahead with this, I believe. Any questions?
These people oversee doing the bid documents and bid process.
Bid documents, they'll
Inspection.
the bidding, then they'll also be on site to supervise and then provide all the paperwork to EPA, start to finish.
As Alan will remember, several years ago at the library, we hired a contractor who didn't show up for the pre-bid meeting and then didn't see something and then tried to come back and recoup his expenses, which he didn't. I'm glad we got the consultant.
Yeah.
A motion acceptance of the proposal.
Motion by Kelly, second by? No second. Mike? Laura? Roll call, please.
Lee,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Myers, Gaber.
Yes.
Willie.
Yes.
Barr.
Yes.
Jovenini,
Yes.
Eckhoff.
Yes. Do you have a timeline on this?
Pardon me?
No timeline, though, right?
No, not, we'll get started though. They're ready to roll as soon as we get the contracts.
Okay, we have an ordinance on amended code for contractor fee license fees. Okay, pretty self-explanatory.
that we already did this.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
did.
so, we talked about this months ago, I didn't even go ahead and do it.
I was pretty sure it was done too.
Well,
We talked about
we
it.
talked about, we said
Never got
we've
it.
already renewed, and so
Yeah.
this is doing the formal action
Yeah.
before we do get to the renewal time.
Yep.
Motion by Kelly, second by Brian. Roll call, please.
Hicks,
Yes.
Myers, Gaber,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Jovenini,
Yes.
Echo,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Thank you. Report on the police pension annual.
It's our favorite time of year, isn't it? When we get to talk about the police and fire pensions. In your packet was the annual report of the Pontiac Fire Pension Fund, which is pretty much outlining the results of our annual report that was submitted to the Department of Insurance. And so that is in front of you. Also in front of you is this PowerPoint presentation, which kind of gives us a short historical perspective of both of the fire and the police pension funds. The top line there, retirement, those are the people in the fire pension funds who are on retirements. And you'll see in 16 we had 5, 17 we had 6 with the liability. The numbers there are the liabilities of what's necessary to have in place to provide an annuity for the retirement and the expected life expectancy of those retirees. Let me take a step back and remind everyone that these pension funds are established by state statute. The criteria and the actuarial assumptions are by the state. These are defined benefit plans, which means that regardless of how much is in them, we are obligated to pay our retirees based upon the state formulas. And so as we look at these snapshots at the end, 3/31 of each year, that's what's required to fully fund our fund. Those with disabilities, you see, was 271, now at 360. Surviving spouses. The fire and police pension funds are pretty unique in that the surviving spouse of the retired policeman and fireman assumes their pension. With IMRF, it's a 50% pension, but it's a full pension with the exception that they don't get the 3% cost of living in it. So you'll see that that is now at 1.175, that liability. Deferred means that someone has left and are waiting to take it at another time. Terminated means that they've left and they're going to ultimately take it with it to somewhere else. And then the active members, you'll see that that's what's required. So as you look at our total liabilities of $10,152,000, over 30%, about 30% is our active members. The other liabilities are all our existing retirees. So we've got $10 million in liability. And statute says that we have to be at 90% fully funded by the year 2040. And so if you take that 90% target, we need to be at $9,136,000. However, the actuarial value of our assets at 3/31/21 was $5.7 million, which means that there's a $3,386,000 unfunded liability. You'll see that the 19-year amortization period, which takes us to the 2040, in order to accomplish that, there's an additional $223,000 that needs to be added to our levy this year. So we've got accrued liability of $10,152,000, asset values of $5.7 million, 4.4 unfunded liability. Again, only 90% of that has to be by 2040. And so we're 57% funded as we were last year. This puts us probably in the top third of the communities in the state of Illinois. That this is the ticking time bomb that all the periodicals and literature talks about. Keeping in mind that as that $3.3 million is has to be levied every year we're getting closer to 40. And so if we really don't see that unfunded liability decline, sooner or later, we're going to, at 10 years, we're going to be significantly higher. So something's got to give. The state has done a couple things. Number one is they developed a second tier of retirement for new employees with not quite as rich of benefits. The other thing is that they have created a state board to oversee the investing of these funds. The 1st of October, all of these assets became property of that board. We have our own account set up with them, but they're now at the board, the state board, and those investments are being handled by them. It's going to be a similar situation similar to IMRF, which we're about 99% funded with IMRF. Much more robust investing. If you remember, we were limited to 40% with our equities, and so those are the steps that have been taken. So as we look at what's going to be required for the next slide, what's required for the levy this year, for our normal costs, that's for our existing employees, 34% of their salary, $181,626, unfunded $223, and so our total property tax levy this year for the fire is $430,000 compared to the $393 of last year. Keep in mind that was with a banner year in the stock market, and so there's still work to be done. Questions? Police pension. You'll see the retirements. In the past 5 years, we went from 9 to 12, keeping in mind that now as individuals are retiring, the pensions are higher. And they're now 10 million plus disabilities. We're at over 1 million surviving spouses, 207,000. Deferred 620. Active members, the liability is 6.3 million of the 18 million of our total liabilities. So again, our liabilities are 18 million. Next slide. Our values are 10,678,000 for an unfunded liability of 7,722,000 and 58% funded. With the good factor be 80. Okay. Total liability of 18 million, our 90% target is 16 million, 5,882,000 is subject to that, and so we have to have an additional 395,000 on our levy for the police. slide. And so you'll see that our property tax levy for this year is going to be $678,468, which is down a little bit. So we're pretty much treading water this year, which is good. At some point, we're going to have to bend the curve, and those talks are continuing every year as the legislature meets. There are lots and lots of communities and lots of shape in what we have. So we still have one more item that we need to get before our finalizing our levy ordinance, and that's our liability insurance renewal. That's the fourth thing, the IMRF, the two pension funds, and the liability insurance takes up mainly our full property tax fund. So the next few weeks we'll be working on that. More good news. So that's it.
Thanks, Doug. The part about more good news, I like that. Okay.
Is the state board limited in the type of investment instrument they
We did, and now with the state board, they're going to have much greater latitude.
And my understanding is they could be a little more aggressive and a little more into equity.
Equities, yes.
Not nearly as limited as it has been in the past.
Yeah.
All right, the next item up is renewal of airport liability insurance.
Yeah, in your packet was the renewal quote from Old Republic Insurance Company for our airport liability. This year was $6,360, which is an increase of $300. Very few companies that provide that sort of coverage, and they've really been pretty consistent in that premium, so we recommend approval of that renewal.
Motion by Kurt, second by John, Zoe. Roll call, please.
Myers? Gaber?
Yes.
Willie?
Yes.
Barr?
Yes.
Jovinetti?
Yes.
Echo?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Hicks?
Yes.
Moving on, mayor's comments. My page is pretty full, but I'll cut it down to a couple. I'd like to commend the guys at the golf course and Taylor for doing a great job this year. Moving ahead, Jake and his crew for certainly helping, as with Chris and all of his people. Keeping the course looking great, moving on. I had a big thing here about, ask Taylor about the golf course, but I don't have to now. Okay. The other thing is there's a groundbreaking Wednesday for part of the Even Glow Lodge movement. Bob will be attending. I'm going to be out of town, so but that's the start of another nice development that we're going to be seeing over the next couple of years. And do that. We got a really nice letter from the Livingston County Environmental Association thanking us for our support of the Vermilion River cleanup and all the volunteers, and specifically Steve Crew and Taylor and all the other volunteers that showed up. And they did a really nice job. I wasn't there personally, but Chris, you were there. How many volunteers would you say?
There was probably, I guess about 15 or 20? Yeah, somewhere like that.
That's what we got.
Yeah. That was a nice turnout. They brought in close to 30-some tires out of the river and a lot of junk. So I think it was a success.
Okay. Great. Always glad to hear it, and it's nice to have the river looking good. Okay. City council comments. City administrator.
Couple things. Number one is we did get our certified census numbers from the 2020 census of 11,150, which is down from the 11,900 that we had in 2010. We don't have the information of exactly where that was, but that information will be coming out in the next several months. Number 2 is a reminder that on the 8th at 4 o'clock, we have a finance committee at City Hall. And number 3, we just wanted to give a little plug to Taylor and the Fall Fest. They improvised and made the thing happen. You guys got a little...
Yeah, we just got some pictures to show you guys. Yeah, improvise is the key word. So, you know, with all the rain that we had lately, it wasn't feasible to do it at Chautauqua Park, our normal spot. Every year that we've done this now, it's been a little bit different, and this year was no exception. But you know, working with the high school and allowing us to use their parking lot certainly did help a whole lot. I know there's still some parking issues, as Sherry mentioned where she lives, but estimated about 3,000 people showed up, somewhere in that range. Combination of outdoors, which you can see here, as well as indoors, the rec center as well. I think that really did have impact on the amount of people that showed up that night, knowing that indoor portion was available to use. So you can see the bounce houses. We had Jay Rodriguez do our DJing. We had kids games, pumpkins from a couple of different pumpkin farms around town, and it just really was a great night. You know, a lot of people had a lot of fun. We had close to 30 vendors, 35 of kind of the food vendors. Huge thank you to a lot of department heads. They really did help out, make this thing possible. So I want to shout them out and thank them for all their help. It was a good night. Everybody had a lot of fun. Really no complaints.
Again, a lot of good comments from many citizens that were there about the fun that they had, and that we even had it, you know, with all the other buildings. Anything else, John? Public comments. We have a public comment.
I would like to, if I could, and I'll be brief, I promise. On behalf of the park.
You already got your contract.
No, I'm just saying that was the whole point of the whole thing. And for tonight's assignment and all the ones over all the decades, thank you. This is a really unique community. Just by showing us some of the slides that improvise and so forth on the panel. You gotta know how grateful we are now. We never take that work for those assignments for granted. This has just been a terrific relationship. So we thank you for the work, but most importantly for the relationship. So really, really appreciate you. And you need thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We do have need for executive session for personnel, land acquisition, land disposition matters. So we will adjourn